I first heard about Star Wars The Old Republic in the fall of 2011, maybe a few months before launch. I was in college at the time, and that particular year had me spending a lot of time in my dorm, as I didn't have much time to do anything other than hanging out in my dorm between my classes and my job. I started seeing trailers for Star Wars The Old Republic around this time, and was into it almost instantly. I'd had a lot of fun with Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2 back during the original Xbox days, and was curious to see how the game would fare when adapted into an MMO. This was during a time period in which a lot of publishers and developers were desperately trying to unseat World of Warcraft as the top-selling MMORPG, as it had been on the market for years and interest in the game was beginning to wane. EA had recently acquired BioWare, and seeing as they were one of the few studios capable of doing it, BioWare was tasked with throwing its hat into the MMO ring as well. At first, I was a little pissed off that we weren't getting KOTOR 3 and that this new MMO was set long after the events of KOTOR 1 and 2, but the more that I saw of it, the more excited I got. I absolutely loved the idea of being able to customize your own Star Wars character and exist in the world with countless other players. You even got to have your own ship with a crew that is special to each of the 8 available classes. Another thing that was exciting was having a choice of faction. Whereas KOTOR 1 and 2 had you fighting not necessarily for the Republic, but definitely against the Sith, the Old Republic lets you pick a side. Like most other MMOs with this faction system, your journey ends up being pretty different depending on which side you pick. This is amplified by the Old Republic's unique feature of a dialogue wheel. Straight out of Mass Effect, the Old Republic features fully voiced cutscenes with dialogue options and story-altering decisions. This game seemed like it was going to be massive, and as a big Star Wars and Mass Effect fan at the time, you could say that I was pretty excited. There was one small little problem though. At that time, I didn't own a Windows PC. I owned a mid-tier MacBook Pro, and the Old Republic wasn't getting a Mac version. So I did what most Mac owners did during that time. I dual booted. MacBooks had a built-in feature where you could section off a part of your hard drive to install a different operating system on it, usually Windows. I figured installing Windows 7 on my MacBook would solve the problem just fine. After all, the MacBook was capable of running games like StarCraft 2 and World of Warcraft at low settings just fine on the Mac OS side at least. Surely a game with similar spec requirements would run just fine on the Windows 7 side, right? Yeah, that's not how that works at all. So I picked up the game while I was on winter break and tried playing it. Here is my attempted recreation of what I saw when I booted the game. The game did run, but not in a way that was always playable. I could walk around some of the hub areas okay, but the minute any intense fighting started, I was in the single digits for frame rate. I had managed to get through a little bit of the Trooper campaign, but ultimately decided to let my subscription run out after a month, as it just wasn't fun to play in that state. It was really hard to look at, and the combat felt very similar to World of Warcraft, which didn't excite much. Months later, I would eventually pick up a Windows gaming laptop, but I had moved on from the Old Republic by that point. I have since uninstalled and reinstalled a few times over the years, but never stuck with it for more than a few hours. As the game is an MMO, it demands a lot of your time, and it can be hard to tear yourself away from other popular releases, especially if you're like me and have a short attention span. Recently though, I've been on a BioWare kick as I played through Mass Effect 3 with all the DLC for the first time, so I decided to reinstall the Old Republic and give it another go. To avoid getting overwhelmed with everything that I left during previous playthroughs, I opted to start over again with the Jedi Consular class. One thing that I noticed immediately was that the game gives you the option of selecting each class's specialization right off the bat. I had a memory of selecting that later in-game in the past, so it seems that BioWare changes to give your character more time to become what you want gameplay-wise. With that, I opted to go for the Jedi Shadow, which is a curious choice for me, as I'm a guns blazing type of player usually. For context, my original character back at launch was the Trooper. Jedi Shadows are more focused on stealth, mind control, and frequent general use of force powers. Honestly, while I was totally down to try a class with some different mechanics than I'm used to, I was more picking it to get the double-bladed lightsaber. Like its predecessors though, you don't get the lightsaber right away as you have to work your way towards it a bit. So I started the game on the planet of Tython at a Jedi temple. As typical for most BioWare games, the game starts off with a crisis that you have to manage by using some aggressive negotiations. BioWare attempts to bridge the cognitive dissonance on this one, that being a Padawan who just landed and has next to no Jedi Knight training being asked to enter combat, by stating that you are a special Jedi, one who seems to have a stronger grasp of the Force than the Order has seen in a long time. I'll go on record saying that while I understand that this writing is from 2011 BioWare and not 2019 BioWare, I have really started to dislike the studio's preference for Chosen One narratives. Granted, most Star Wars films and games are giant Chosen One narratives, but I'd like to see some variation at some point. I'm actually thinking about doing a non-Force sensitive class playthrough at some point, just to see if anything changes as far as the Chosen One-iness, as I don't have much memory of the Troopers intro at this point. For now though, we're off on an adventure with the Chosen One. I'm coming! Regardless of my issues with the introduction of the character, I still think the writing of this intro sequence on Tython is good. It involves attempting to save or kill a Twi'lek man from a neighboring village who has gone a bit mad with force powers and is threatening violence against the Order and the Republic. This does eventually end in a confrontation which leads the Jedi on a hunt for a Sith Lord that is able to warp the minds of some of the strongest Jedi Masters alive. While I could sit here and talk about every planet that I've gone to, I wanted to call special attention to Terrace. This isn't because of the look of Terrace, as it's understandably a pile of rubble after what happened in KOTOR 1. It's It's just the fact that we're following up on a plot point from KOTOR 1 that makes me happy. Restoration efforts are underway, though far less along than the Telos restoration was in KOTOR 2, and you're still fighting the rat ghouls and trying to help synthesize a cure against the ever-mutating virus that turns people into rat ghouls. There's even a point where you enter the Endar Spire, the ship from the beginning of KOTOR 1 that got shot down, though it appears to be in way too good a condition given that it exploded in space and then crashed down into the planet. Still, it's nice to see touches like that in the game, and it's apparent that the studio is putting a great deal of care into things like this. While the game's graphics were never intended to really push hardware to its limit, as it intended to run in an environment that a few hundred people could run around in, the Old Republic still looks pretty good when ran on a relatively new machine with graphics set to max. Again, my first impression of the Old Republic was this, so it's nice to see the version of the game that is more like what the developers intended. It is a noticeable departure from what we saw in KOTOR 1 and 2, but that was inevitable given the passage of time and the overall scope of the Old Republic. Also, the change of engine most likely had a lot to do with this as well, as the Old Republic runs on the Hero engine, a somewhat unknown engine at the time that has not been used much since the Old Republic. As far as content goes, pretty much all of the vanilla version of the Old Republic is available for free. BioWare implemented this about a year after release of the game and have tweaked it since then. At this point in time, you can play through each of the 8 classes' full vanilla stories for free. Given that I put quite a few hours into the Jedi Consular storyline already, that is a ton of content to be giving people for free, and it's very strange for this to be coming from a game that's published by EA. While I can pretty much promise that I won't play all 8 of these campaigns anytime soon, I definitely intend to finish the Consular story and try out one of the Sith classes as well. As far as combat goes, nothing much has changed from when I last played as far as I can tell. It is very much your typical MMO layout, and that is going to appeal and not appeal to certain people. I guess I can kind of look past it as KOTOR 1 and 2 both played this way as well, but I think I would have been happier with something like what Black Desert Online or the Elder Scrolls Online did with their combat. Your mileage will definitely vary when it comes to this, so I guess it's good that the game is free to play as you get ample time to decide if one of the main mechanics of the game is really for you. Finally, I think the Old Republic has a great and welcoming community behind it. I would liken it to the community around Final Fantasy XIV, which is said to be very welcoming as well. There are a ton of high-level players wandering around in the beginning areas of the game, and some of them even stop to help new players. This happened to me as I entered a heroic mission and found myself getting stopped. A high-level player showed up to help me through, and even took me on a short adventure through the map to collect these datacrons that permanently increase your stats. Also, they did this every time I found one. They also had a companion that was basically naked. I'm not sure what that was about. After that, they took their leave and I continued on the main story quest. This was the perfect experience for a new player like me, as the high-level player did help me get something awesome, but didn't demand hours of my time. They just helped me get some cool stuff for a little bit, and then left me to continue exploring on my own. It's clear that this person knew how to introduce a player to this world, get them excited to play more, and not be too overbearing. To this person, and people like them, you have my thanks. If you're going to try an MMO but don't want to sink money into a subscription for a game that you won't even know if you're going to like, or you don't want to play a game that's constantly trying to get you to spend more money on microtransactions, then Star Wars The Old Republic is a good choice. Granted, you have to install Origin to get it, but most people have it installed for Apex Legends anyway. Or wait, does that not matter now that everyone hates the Epic Game Store? Whatever. If you like this video, then please give it a like and subscribe if you want to see more quick dives into games like this. Until next time, happy gaming, and may the Schwartz be with you. Later.